Welcome back to DIY Culinary School. Today I want to talk about 10 items that I consider level 2 kitchen essentials. And at the end I'll give you 3 items that seem like they're totally necessary to learning to cook, but I think you can actually push off a little bit longer in the buying process as you're stocking your kitchen. Now, first of all, as I got serious about learning to cook, I had a pretty well-stocked kitchen, thanks in large part to generous family and friends and the hard work my wife put into our wedding registry. And to me, those basics are a general collection of the following: cutting board, knives, utensils, pots and pans, probably some bakeware, measuring cups and utensils. And this might not always be considered an absolute essential, but I would argue that a kitchen scale is essential if you're trying to learn to cook. And then some small appliances, a mixer, a blender, and you don't always have to have both, but a food processor does some things that a mixer doesn't. Now I'm sure we could have a big healthy debate on if every piece of this is essential or if I'm missing anything, but overall, this is a really good start. What I want to do now is talk about 10 more items that didn't seem essential, but now that I've utilized them, I wouldn't want to live without. Number 1 is a dedicated kitchen notebook. Now I've used notes on my phone before, but I really like having a notebook that mostly lives in the kitchen. Sometimes if I'm watching Great British Bake Off, I'll grab it and write down the episode that they made hamburger buns so I can go back and try that recipe. As I'm experimenting, maybe trying to figure out the exact right timing to make a chocolate fondant cake, I'll take notes in here. I'll make notes of recipes and temperatures. I'm a big fan of the Moleskine, I believe I'm saying this right, Kahir journals. I've used these for a long time. They hold up well. They lay flat when you want them to. Great notebook, but anything that you can use to keep all of your notes and ideas and thoughts in one place, highly essential for me anyway. Number 2 for me kind of goes along with the first one, but it is a 3-ring binder in these plastic sheet protectors. Now, when you're trying out a new recipe, if it's something you get online, I highly recommend printing it out. That way you're not fumbling with your phone at a critical moment, trying to remember what's going on. But also, I think one of the keys to becoming good at cooking is repetition and repeating the same recipes or techniques multiple times until you really start to get the hang of it and know where things can go wrong and how to adjust. And so for me, if I have a recipe that I've tried that I like, then I'll just stick it in one of these plastic sheets. That way I don't have to remember where my 3-hole punch is. It also stays cleaner, and they don't tear. And then once I'm done with a recipe, if I like it, I'll make some notes. Hey, maybe add a little bit more cream. I don't need to bake it for the full amount of time, they say, increase the temperature, whatever. Number 3, unfortunately, I can't really use too well right now, but it is a watch with a second hand. Tendonitis, in case you're wondering. Have you ever seen Gordon Ramsay cook anything without wearing a watch? I have not. I have clocks all over the kitchen that I can use. In fact, if I need to set a timer, I'll usually just say, hey Google, set a 15-minute timer, please.
All right, 15 minutes. And we're starting now.
But where a watch that tells you the seconds comes in really handy is sometimes you need to cook something for 2 minutes, like a poached egg. If you look at the clock on the stove, it's going to say 2:52. Well, you don't know if it's 2:52 in 30 seconds. So utilizing a watch and keeping track of those minute times is so critical for execution and repeatability if you're cooking fresh pasta. Just get a watch with a second hand. It can be analog or digital as long as you can really track exactly when something starts and stops. Number 4 is a salt well. This is literally just a container that holds salt loose. I've got mine loaded with Diamond Kosher crystal salt. But once I really started understanding the importance of seasoning, having something that you could just grab in pinches or bunches or little bits at a time is so much more user-friendly, and you have so much more control than using a shaker. Over a pot or pan, you just grab a little bit, and as you're tasting, you need a little bit more. You can literally just use a bowl and keep this stuff in here, but have this available when you're cooking. Having salt and using your fingers rather than shaking it into whatever you're cooking, to me, essential. Number 5 are quarter sheet pans. Now, I bought a 2-pack. I liked them so much I bought 2 more. I use these things for everything, whether it's seasoning meat. This keeps the salt and pepper or whatever else you're seasoning with from going everywhere. If it's individually quick freezing fresh pasta or fruit or vegetables before you put it in a bag in the freezer, these are a great size for most freezers. They fit great in our toaster oven. You can obviously bake or broil or anything in the regular oven with a quarter sheet. This is just a really handy size. It's not as big and unwieldy as a half sheet, easier to wash. But where these things become really awesome is if you get a fitting wire rack that nestles inside. This is super great if you're frying anything, you can drain it on here. If you want to air dry a cut of steak in the fridge overnight before you cook it to get a really crispy crust, having a fitting wire rack unlocks a whole lot more possibilities with these quarter sheet pans. They're a great size for just about everything. Get a good quality that doesn't warp. I really like this Nordic ware. They're not terribly expensive and they get used more than just about anything else in my kitchen. Number 6 are prep bowls. Now you might stop and think, hold on, you only bought these because you started shooting YouTube videos. And you're right, I only bought these because I started shooting YouTube videos. Before that, I just had some random mismatched ones that I've collected over the years. And they work fine. You don't have to get the matching set. But these are so good as you're weighing out or prepping your ingredients, having a couple sizes. Your mise en place is huge. That's something you're gonna hear every great chef talk about over and over and over again is mise en place. And so having all your ingredients measured out, pre-cut and everything, these are great for that. Anytime you're cutting vegetables or whatever, have a bowl set out and put your trim in there. That way you're not peeling onions over the garbage can. Just keep a bowl, throw all your trim in there and then dump it in the trash when you're done or freeze it for stocks or whatever. The other thing that's great about having a matching set is as you're weighing ingredients, each of these weigh, if not exactly the same amount, pretty dang close. And what's cool about that is I can't tell you how many times I've weighed something out and then 20 minutes later, I don't remember what the weight is. If you have a set that matches, you can just grab an empty one, put it on the scale, zero the scale out, and then throw your one that you forgot the weight on, and then boom. You know that the zero is gonna be true with whichever bowl you're using, and so you're only getting the measurement of what's in that bowl. My number 7 essential is a bench scraper, or preferably multiples. Now, metal one that you can get at just about anywhere is great for pasta dough and some baking, pie doughs and stuff like that. But really, the plastic ones are great for a lot of things. These are extremely cheap on Amazon and even cheaper if you want to buy in bulk at a restaurant supply depot. I use these if I'm cutting a lot of vegetables. Instead of using my knife, I'll scrape the ones that I just finished with into a prep bowl. You can press things through sieves or tammies with these. Ultimately, I keep them right in my drawer, right next to my knives, and I use these things all the time for a ton of different things, and they're so inexpensive, they make no sense not to have, to me anyway. Number 8 is a digital meat thermometer. This might fall into Essentials 101 for some people, but I didn't have one for a long time, and now I don't know what I did without it. Obviously, number 1 use is checking the doneness of a piece of meat, but I also use this if I'm frying, checking the oil temperature, because it's just a lot faster and to me more accurate than a candy thermometer. One word of caution, I've gone through several of these because I buy the cheap ones on Amazon and they ultimately fail, usually pretty quickly. This one I just recently bought for a whole lot more than the 10 or 20 bucks I've spent on Amazon before. I bought it at Williams-Sonoma. You can buy a cheap one, ultimately you're gonna replace a cheap one, so maybe just get a good one to start with. Number 9 are sieves. I didn't have these for a long time and now I don't know what I did without them. Again, I use these things for so many different things, whether it's making a puree and filtering out raspberry seeds, straining soups, straining liquids, even sometimes drying vegetables. These work well for so many things. Once you have them, you'll use them all the time, and I don't know if you'll understand how you could go back to not having them on hand. A couple different sizes are great. You can buy the conical ones. I recently bought a tammy, which is a drum sieve, which is really good for pureeing harder vegetables or potatoes. Cheaper than a potato ricer. So if you don't have a potato ricer and you want to make mashed potatoes or gnocchi, drum sieve is actually a good investment as well. To start with, just get yourself some decent sieves and you'll wonder what you did without them. Number 10, and remember this is my essentials list, so I get to say what's on here, and that is a masterclass subscription. Now, when I first signed up for masterclass, it was because I'd seen a bunch of Gordon Ramsay videos from some of his old cooking shows, and they're great. But where I've absolutely fallen in love with masterclasses are the Thomas Keller series, where he really gets deep down into basic techniques, foundational techniques. And honestly, it's almost therapeutic. I think Thomas Keller is almost like watching Mr. Rogers meets Bob Ross meets the best chef America has ever produced, if not the best, one of the top 3 best chefs in the world right now. And masterclass is great for more than just cooking. When my wife and I adopted our first dog, we actually watched the masterclass by Brandon McMillan on dog training, and it was super helpful. There were things that were super intuitive to the dog that we might not have understood, and we got him trained in his obedience commands in no time flat. So if you are interested in becoming a better home cook, sign up for Masterclass. Okay, so now I may have convinced you to spend some money. So now I'm gonna show you 3 things that I think you can actually wait to purchase till later on to save some money and invest in some of these other 10 items. Before we get to that, if this is helpful to you, please hit like and subscribe. And if you wanna buy any of these items that I've talked about, I'll put links below. It won't cost you anymore, but it will help support the channel. Number 1 non-essential that you can save your money on is what I call recipe collections. I think every cookbook shelf in America probably has some edition of the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. There's nothing wrong with this. There's good recipes in here, but really it's just a collection of recipes, and we all have something called Google. So if I decide I want to make pecan pie, I can Google pecan pie and find a very good recipe. Overall, I don't think this does a great job teaching you how to cook. It just is a collection of recipes. So you're spending more time in the kitchen, you're learning technique, and you're attempting some more gourmet or higher end recipes, and you think, well, gosh, I've got to have an immersion blender, and I'm telling you, you probably don't. Certainly there's a time and place for it. Certainly it's a good tool and it has uses. But to start with, if you have a good blender, you can get most of it done without having an immersion blender. They're not terribly expensive. They don't take up a ton of space. There's no huge reason not to get one unless budget's a concern. But if you're trying to allocate your money towards tools that you're going to get a lot of use out of, you can probably stay away from the immersion blender for now. Finally, as you start getting into more advanced recipes, you're going to think that you have to own this next item. And that item is an immersion circulator. These are sometimes referred to as sous vide. That's actually the cooking technique, not the tool itself. If you don't know, circulates water at a very precise temperature so you can cook things in a water bath. You will be told that it's the absolute best way to cook a medium rare steak, and that this is how all the high-end restaurants are doing it. That's true to an extent. However, if you have a Masterclass subscription, I think Thomas Keller's Côte de Boeuf recipe actually produces better results than I've gotten with this. I was born in the Midwest, so I think I'm culturally obligated to tell you I got this at a great deal. It was over half off, brand new, and I do use it. I'm glad I have it, but if you're allocating your money to the essentials right now, you can avoid this one for the time being. Now, don't feel bad if you've already bought an immersion circulator. A lot of us have, and it does have a lot of really good uses that it excels at. And here's one I just discovered the other day. If you ever have a recipe that calls for softened butter, and you haven't planned ahead and you haven't softened the butter, I know I'm guilty of it plenty of times. Microwave doesn't really do a great job softening it. You get cold butter and you get melted butter, and then you get some softened butter. If you just put your butter in a bag, if you have a vacuum sealer, vacuum seal it, and put it in a water bath and set your immersion circulator to 70 degrees, give it a few minutes, your butter will be perfectly softened without being melted. All right, so let's debate. Which of these are non-essential, or what is essential that I completely ignored, and where am I wrong? Or where am I right? That'd be nice to hear too. Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.